How do people get onto your radar?
I think there's probably a bit of a misunderstanding where tech companies think they just need to be in front of NICE for us to look at it. But actually, because we're systems led, we'll look at the problem first. And then if you fit the problem, then great. That being said, we get lots of information about what the system needs are. What are the pain points and clinical pathways? What are the issues that are happening? Our job is to basically look to see if there's any health tech out there that could be used to address those pain points.
On a super practical level, how do you horizon scan? Hey everybody, delighted this week to be joined by Tharni, who is Horizon Scanning Senior Health Technology Lead at NICE. We're going to find out exactly what that means, exactly what that does, and yeah, exactly how Tharni spends her time. She's also been at Hertility. She was head of scientific product research there. So we've got loads of startup-y stuff to talk about and women's health stuff to talk about. Research tech at King's, where she was a PhD student as well. She was a lab tech at Guy's and Tommy's, embryology assistant at the Center for Reproductive and Genetic Health, and also 14 other experiences on LinkedIn that I can't be bothered to click the link on that I'm sure Tharni's going to tell us all about. So Tharni, welcome to the Healthtech podcast. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Really good, thank you. Really good. You've met my son Levi, you've met my wife, you've met loads of our team, and this is the first time that we're meeting. So
yes.
I am delighted to finally get to have a chat to you myself for a change, rather than hear about you, which is awesome
as well.
Yeah, reverse order of importance, I think. So you have met all the important people, firstly, which is good. Really cool background. I mean, 14 other things below this stuff that we can go into, and I'm looking forward to you getting into MSCs, Royal Veterinary College, maternity support worker, Institute of Neurology. I mean, you've done absolutely loads of stuff in healthcare, and you're now at NICE Horizon Scanning, and so huge importance to health tech and startups. And so what an awesome career. I actually can't wait to hear about this. So where does this all start for you? And yeah, talk us through it.
First started out doing an undergrad in neuroscience, and that was at UCL. And it was something that I thought I'd be good at because I was quite, academic as a kid. But actually I was really, really bad at it. And I almost failed a couple of modules actually during my undergrad. It just didn't gel with me. And I don't know why, but it just didn't. So I graduated, and I barely graduated. I graduated with a 2.2, I think. And then just had no idea what to do with my life, essentially.
But this is so relatable already. I spectacularly failed my first medical school exam.
How did you?
Yeah, molecular biology, like pretty much the fundamental building blocks of what all the other medical knowledge is then built on. I spectacularly failed.
It's hard,
completely relatable. And then then I was like, is this even for me? Like, why didn't I even want to do the work? Like, is there something that did it? So yeah, I get it. And I, then scraped it beyond that. So I get it.
I think for a lot of the sort of life sciences degrees, people come in and want something that's quite like clinical and patient facing and tangible, and then you go in and you do your degree and it is like hardcore, like receptors, molecular structures, and you're just thinking, why on earth am I learning this? It just doesn't convert. But yeah, during my degree I was working part-time at an IVF clinic, which is where I sort of started being interested in fertility, and that sort of patient facing environment. And then I graduated really not knowing what to do. And then I knew that I always wanted to work in the NHS, but I just didn't really know how I would work there. So I was scrolling through the NHS job pages and found an ad for this maternity support worker position, which is basically you are trained as a healthcare assistant, but you work in a labour ward and postnatal and triage and all those other maternity specific spaces. And I got it, and that was really, really fun. It was really exciting, really sort of, I mean, you've worked in sort of emergency clinical situations. It was insanely thrilling in a way, but obviously sometimes really sad.
Yeah.
But I think you sort of thrive off like the excitement of seeing a child being born and all of that stuff. And that was really, really exciting.
It is actually an amazing side of medicine, actually. It's an amazing part of medicine because it's in a hospital, and this I've told the story in this podcast before, but like it's in a hospital. And I remember I did a neonates job, and when on our first day of neonates, the consultant reminded us all all the new doctors on the ward that were rotating in reminded us all that bear in mind that this is a completely normal human process. This is the only part of the hospital where you have completely healthy people doing a completely normal thing. And you
Mm.
need to remember that. And
Yes.
actually, what you're supporting is, humans coming into the world, and this is what we need to do to. And it was like this amazing frame of like, wow, okay, the importance of this cannot be overstated. And you know what? I can actually remember as well. You talk about, um, the gravity of it and stuff. Like I can remember feeding off that. I can remember the very first time. A lot of babies are born, and you'll know this, that aren't breathing. They
Yeah.
haven't actually. They need a little bit of support to
Yes.
take
Yeah.
their first breath for various different reasons, and it's relatively common. Whether C-section particularly, you're not forced down the canal, and therefore you don't expel the fluid off the lungs, and therefore you just need a bit of help. Anyway, I can remember the first time I gave one little rescue breath to a lifeless baby and just saw the baby come to life, and I just lost it and just started crying because I just didn't know how to cope with what I'd just seen. Like I was like, what did it not have that it now has? How did that get there? Where has that come from? Like it yeah, the just the gravity of the whole thing, and how that just gave me so much energy for that rotation was crazy. So I completely understand, and I completely get it.
Yeah, it's so emotional, isn't it? I remember crying when I first saw a baby being born as well. Um, yeah, and it's funny you say that actually because the role so my role is mainly working for C-sections and in the operating theater, and so you actually
Mm,
you forget what a normal I say normal, a childbirth without any sort of surgery is like, a sort of
it's true.
vaginal childbirth,
You do.
and then I imagine also when you're a doctor, it's the same thing where, um if you are having a baby yourself, like if your partner is pregnant, you often just fixate on all the horrible things that have happened to kids that you've seen, and you forget that actually people have very normal experiences during pregnancy. So I think that's when I got pregnant, that's something I really struggled with because I just sort of you just fixate on all the
I was the
very
same when Jess got
rare.
pregnant.
Yeah, like it's really bad, isn't it? But you
Mm.
just think worst case scenario, don't you? That's where your mind automatically goes.
You do, and it's because as humans we suck at interpreting statistics.
Mm,
And
exactly.
when your lived experience is seeing all of the stuff that gets escalated uh, into and all the pathologies basically, because
Mm.
that's all you see. There's no point you sitting in on loads of normal stuff. You end up just with a very skewed idea of how many things do go wrong. And yeah, I did really struggle with that actually
Yeah.
when Jess was pregnant, particularly at the very beginning, actually, and just thinking about the frailty of embryology and just all of the potential things that can branch at this stage: one cell to two, two cells to four, four cells to eight. Like you're
Yeah.
like, oh god, we're right at the beginning of all of these branches, and then you're thinking about, God, it's now developing a nervous system, and what if something goes wrong? And I was just utterly paralyzed by this. Like I was, yeah, awful, awful, but got through it.
Especially with all the information that they try and, like, overload you with during pregnancy as well, like, "Your baby is the size of a mango." I do
Oh, the fruit
I do
thing,
enjoy that
honestly.
though, to be fair.
Well, let me tell you one thing that you might not enjoy. So, I you got all the apps that tell you all the different fruits and all the different
Yes, yeah.
things of all the different stuff. There was one that was like cook a meal every week with the thing that your baby is the size of, and it gave you a recipe for it. I was like, this is taking it a little bit too far for me. I think that one,
That's so weird.
that, it's just weird, isn't it? It's just weird.
Just
But
strange.
it does exist if that is your thing. And so we listen, but we don't judge, etc.
Yes, yeah, exactly, exactly. There's
uh,
someone out there for something. So, yeah, sorry. I worked in a labor ward for a bit, and then because there wasn't really any room for progression and I really struggle with night shifts, if I'm honest. I
mm.
went back to the IVF clinic and I sort of worked there for a bit. So my role was an embryology assistant. So it basically means supporting the embryology staff and the andrology staff with any of the procedures in the clinic.
That's a cool job.
It's really cool. Yeah, just
Wow.
working in an IVF clinic is actually mad. It's insane. it's you can't believe it's happening when it's happening, if that makes sense.
Wow. Wow. Doing the
Um,
procedures as well. Like, what a procedural job. No emails. Glorious.
oh no, there's so many
Oh,
emails,
fine.
so much admin, so
Ah,
much like
of course
because
there is.
because you
Ah,
have to upload all your data to the HFEA and all that stuff. So there's like lots and lots of paperwork involved, if that makes
right.
sense. Um,
Right. Ah, that's a shame.
so yeah, no, it's fine. It's just part of the job, isn't it?
It is. Until AI fixes it anyway, but I'm sure we'll come on to that.
Probably.
How long did we get? A few minutes in before I mentioned it? But anyway.
Everyone's obsessed. And then I decided I was a bit like put off about academia because of my experience with my undergrad, but there really wasn't anywhere else to go. So I decided to do a master's and then a PhD in women's health. But the way I got my PhD was a bit weird actually, because I did my master's, really enjoyed it, and I expected not to enjoy it because it was academia, but actually because it was a subject that I chose when I was a bit older and I sort of understood how
Yeah.
academia works. I feel like I thrived in that sort of environment. And then towards the end, I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense to sort of do a PhD now. Couldn't find any PhD positions in the subject of women's health, which I was interested in. So they were all super
Says a lot, doesn't it, for the state of
yeah,
play?
it does. There were a few projects, but they're all so competitive and, everyone's applying for the same thing, so it was really
Mm,
tricky. But I ended up getting a lab tech job at Guy's and St. Thomas's, and that was in a research group that studies maternal and fetal disease. So they're they were studying several different things, but one of their main sort of things that they were looking at is intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy, or some people call it obstetric cholestasis, which I don't know if you know much on, but it's a rare disease, but when it's severe, it's like devastating because it causes stillbirth and preterm birth. Yeah, and it's not nice. And even if you do have it and it's not severe, sometimes you get a really awful itch and you're just not sleeping and you're worrying throughout the whole pregnancy. So it's not ideal.
just explain what cholestasis is briefly, just for people.
Essentially, it's basically there's like an imbalance in your bile acids that are going from the mum to the fetus. So what ends up happening is that usually in a normal pregnancy, the bile acids like they're exchanged between mum and fetus, and then they're filtered out. So they go straight to the
Mm,
mum, and then it's fine. But in cholestasis, it feels like so. What happens is the bile acids accumulate in the fetus, and then that is in theory leading to all these adverse effects like preterm birth and stillbirth. So it's really the most devastating thing is that when the stillbirth happens, it happens very suddenly. So you could be perfectly fine, as in you'll have an itch and you'll have the symptoms of cholestasis, and the next day, things could go all wrong. So really, really devastating disease. And we worked really closely with this amazing charity called ICP Support, who do lots and lots of work in helping women with their condition. And now, thankfully, the knowledge on the condition has improved. So we are now aware of the most like high risk groups who are more likely to
mm,
have these adverse outcomes, which is a
right.
good thing because it means that you can hopefully help people with management and stuff. And my old research group are still doing work in terms of like different other drugs that could be used that could improve management as well. So um yeah, just really awful disease, and that's what the research group were primarily doing. But they're also doing work on gestational diabetes, and the whole sort of central point was like metabolic diseases, if that makes sense. Um,
It does. It
yeah,
does.
so
Amazing. Meaningful as well. It's
really meaningful.
great to
Yeah,
work on.
yeah, 100%. And I basically joined as a lab tech, not expecting anything, and then the work that I was doing was already akin to a PhD, and my supervisor was really, really supportive. And she said, if you want to do a PhD, I'll try and find the tuition fees and you can just do it here.
Wow.
So I was very lucky in that
That's
respect.
great. Lucky, yes, but also put yourself in the right place at the right time, worked hard, and yeah, okay, got a bit of luck, but that wouldn't have happened had you not have been good at what you did, or all the rest of the things that you were signaling, right? So you don't want to underplay that.
That's very kind to say. I think it's just I mean, what I always tell people is that the tradition you don't always have to apply for a PhD in the traditional route. There are other ways to sort of
Mm.
get your foot in the door, so to speak, and then so the way that I got my foot in the door was via being a lab tech and then applying for a PhD. So one of the I think the positive things about me getting the PhD in the first place was that because I had done all that lab tech work, I had pilot data. So I could just bounce off the pilot data and use that to sort of describe the scope of the project, if that makes sense.
It
So
does.
yeah, so that was really useful. And my PhD was focused on lots of different things. I was very lucky to be funded by one of the NIHR BRCs. So they focus on translational science, which means that
Mm.
no like animal work, no, not really any hardcore sort of cell culture work or anything like that, which for me was really beneficial because as I said before, like when I really struggle with the whole like understanding how a molecule translates into a patient outcome, at the end of the day. So having that sort of translational sort of clinical trial type work was really, really useful. And so some of the work I did in my PhD was developing a biosensor that could detect bile acids and hopefully help towards diagnosis of intrahepatic
Wow.
cholestasis of pregnancy, which is cool.
Wow.
Very much bench side.
Detected them where out of interest?
So it's basically you have so you make the biosensor, but you have an enzyme, and it's like an enzymatic reaction, and then that sort of translates into an electrical current, and then you measure the current, and then figure out how many bile acids are in the sample based on the current.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's kind of it's very much like experimental bench side, and then the idea is that if we had been successful, if we had the money, we would have like scaled it into a prototype and then, because it was the idea was that there wasn't a point of care test for bile acids. There still isn't, as
Correct,
far as
yeah.
I know. And it would have been useful as a way of keeping like maintaining the monitoring of women during
Mm.
pregnancy, and so that it could
Mm.
just keep checking their bile acids because once the bile acids exceed 100, that's when you sort of get like the real red flags that something might happen. So if we kept on monitoring them, that would be a good way to sort of make sure that people were staying underneath that 100 mark, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. It's a shame that does not exist. It's a shame that
Yeah, I mean, it's like
where's that IP set now?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I
Okay,
worked I
interesting.
worked I worked in a really cool lab in Imperial, and they were doing lots of like biosensor work, and I don't know whether any of those biosensors are now
Mm.
in a different place than they were before, but yeah, that was super
If
interesting.
someone from Imperial listening can just do a quick search for that, or just go and have a look round, let me
It's
know.
difficult,
That's
isn't it?
quite
Like,
interesting.
you need the money, you need people to give you money to do this work, and it's
Look,
a
commercializing research and
yeah,
commercializing academia as a whole, tech transfer is a whole nother hour we could spend
yeah,
talking about
yeah,
that and incentives and all the rest of it.
yeah.
But anyway, we won't
Um,
for
but
now.
we won't for now. But yeah, that was part of the PhD. I also did a clinical trial where I was looking at the fetal heartbeat. So I was looking at this non-invasive fetal ECG monitor. So you basically stick it on your belly and then it looks at the fetal ECG. But it's ambulatory, which means that you can take it home and you can wear it for a
Wow.
day or even a couple of days if you want to, I guess. Then I was like looking at the fetal ECG data and then seeing whether the fetuses from pregnancies which came from like a woman with ICP compared to a normal pregnancy were any different. So that was quite exciting as well.
So you've always been into health tech, really? Like you've always sort of gravitated towards it, haven't you?
Well, to be honest, like I didn't even think of health tech as a concept before doing my PhD, if
Yeah,
that makes sense. Like I didn't really
it does.
realize
It's
like
interesting. Yeah.
I didn't realize all the possibilities that health tech could have within the NHS, within healthcare until doing my PhD. And my PhD is like the title of it was I think it's like innovative ways of diagnosing and monitoring cholestasis in pregnancy, or something like that.
Mm.
I can't remember the exact title. But yeah, that was definitely where I sort of gained a passion, I think, for health tech for sure.
In that hypothesis, as you've just said, like here's a metric that if it goes up causes a problem. Is there a test for that metric? No. Shall we make one? Yes. Okay, cool. Now we've made it. is there a way to commercialize it? And then, that's where you go into tech transfer, and then it becomes, something
Yeah.
different. But
We
no,
were
no, it's
way
super
before tech
interesting.
transfer. It was
Yeah,
very much
yeah.
just imagine me pipetting at a bench. That was it.
It's so funny though. I think the equivalent in the tech world, you see all these things of like people that you think something's automated, and then you look into the box and it's just a human doing the thing. I think
Yeah.
a lot of MVPs are actually that. Like, especially like image recognition stuff. What was it? There was one recently, wasn't there? Like image recognition was actually just a group of humans doing it to begin with, or whatever. But anyway,
When you visit these lab environments and it's literally just like cobbled together like a MacGyver type of situation. Like we found this bit of tinfoil at Tesco's and we've like scrunched it into a ball. Everybody.
that is behind the scenes of every business ever. So everyone listening, whether you're part of one or you own one or you run one, will know that that is exactly what happens behind the
Yeah.
scenes. So
Yeah.
at least, again, relatable for everybody, that. And then obviously Hertility, which is super cool.
Yeah, super cool. So I joined Hertility when I was in my writing up phase for my PhD, and I joined part time. I joined at a stage where the company was pre-seed.
Whoa.
Yes. Why
Very cool. Now I'm
that
really interested.
that
This is great.
you weren't interested before? Okay.
I definitely was, but now I'm super interested.
Yeah, it was really exciting. I mean, I there were literally a handful of us. We were trying to figure out what we were doing. So
Wow.
I was very lucky in the sense that I was a bit of a nepo hire. Basically, the two of the founders, so Natalie Getroy and Helen O'Neill,
Mm.
went to UCL around the same time as doing my MSc. I actually did my MSc with Nat, and we always like kept in
Mm.
touch through one way or another. And then they sort of mentioned, "Oh, we're like working on this project. Like we need someone. We need help with some of the stuff, basically." And I said, "I'm more than happy to be involved because I was writing up and like I just need any excuse to get away from writing up for my thesis because it was so boring." Um, so yeah, and then essentially what they needed was because I don't know if I mean I'm sure not everyone knows what the Hertility products are. Actually, it's a much bigger platform than it was when I first started. But the first core sort of product was an at-home blood test coupled with an online health assessment. And the idea is that you can test biomarkers of your reproductive health at home, and then you do the test, you fill out an online health assessment, and then you get a report after sending the sample off, basically. And everything's done via like finger prick sample, so you don't need a healthcare professional to come in and take your blood. So my job was basically to figure out how to take the results of the blood test and the results of the online health assessment and automate that into a bespoke report that was
Mm.
relevant and flagged any conditions that needed to be flagged. Um, so it was really cool because I didn't know anything about software engineering or anything
Mm.
like that before I started, and what I what we basically worked on was you'd kind of describe it as like a rules-based algorithm. So
Yeah.
if this happens, then you need to say this in the report, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was really exciting. So we launched the test, and we were just constantly iterating. Like it felt like I remember finishing all the write up and like working with engineers and like remember that September launch date and it was launched and I remember thinking, "Ah, probably don't have to do anything for a while." And then like straight away it's like we need to update this. This is wrong. This bug needs to be fixed. So that was really funny. That just shows how naive I was, I think, going into tech.
Wow.
And yeah, I was there for ages. So I only left like a almost a year ago now. Um, and we then worked on improving the core product. So the first test, the first product had about 20 questions in the health assessment. And then we quickly realized that that number of questions doesn't capture all the information we need
Mm.
um, to really give a holistic picture of someone's health. So we improved the questionnaire, added a bunch more questions, which in theory sounds like a fairly easy thing to do, but it meant completely reformatting and rewriting the report.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of work. And that was like my next big project at Hertility. But I was also doing lots of stuff like designing trials and everything to make sure that we
Wow.
had, we had we had proof that finger prick blood tests were concordant with venous blood tests, blood tests for your arm. So yeah, stuff like that, and it was just really fun. I really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Um, and by the time you left, you were head of scientific product research.
Yes.
What does that mean? Why that job title? What the reason I ask, by the way, is because like it's obviously well, all titles are made up to some extent, but they reflect in part the values of the organization in order to create that role, right? So
Yeah.
that's actually signaling that Hertility care about scientific product research, which sounds like a very good thing. So I think that's what's interesting to me is that head of suggests as well you had direct reports. So actually there's a team of people now completely focused on this one thing. So that's why I asked the question of what were you exactly doing, because I think it's an interesting signal, because my next question is going to be around like what do you think made Hertility so successful, and in part I have a hunch it's focusing on stuff like this, but
Both Nat and Helen are research scientists by trade, so I think it
mm,
would be odd for them to be founding a company, but also have no interest in scientific rigor. So yeah, I mean, it is essentially it's not like it wasn't a title that existed or I think they really thought about. I think they just when we were first starting out, we just assumed that all the things we were doing were going to be grounded by science and evidence. So
yeah,
it makes sense that we were so fully integrated into the product team, and the engineering team, and they knew all of us and we knew all of them, and it was very much like a co-production, if that makes sense. So
yeah, it does.
it was really nice because the engineers, when we first started out, the engineers didn't have any background in healthcare or health tech, um, and I'm talking about the first engineers. The engineers following on did, but they
Sure.
were they were keen for us to tell them the problem, and then they would find ways to fix that problem, if that makes sense. And then yeah, it was great. It was absolutely fantastic. And then as we moved on and we started like creating like an operations team, like we were sort of embedded in that. We were everywhere. I always sounds like very arrogant, but I always thought of ourselves as like the foundation of the entire company because we were in business development, we were in operations,
Yeah,
we were sticking our fingers in all the pies, if that makes sense. And you know,
it does.
we insisted on seeing the outputs of everything to make sure that they were scientifically accurate and everything. So yeah, it really was like the core of the whole company in a sense.
Yeah, I've been in this game a long time in health tech as well, and like when I hear something like that, I have this big exhale moment, because a company like Hertility that's achieved the scale that it has done so doing this. And that is a great sign that you
Mm.
can have this level of scientific rigor that touches every part of the organization, and your business can be successful. Your business can be successful actually because of it, not in spite of it as well. And I think that again is a great signal, because Hertility being a B2C or B2B2C organization, selling tests that eventually reach the consumer, whether that's a direct sale or through an employer, or all the other models that Hertility have. There's always this kind of class one, like let's just do class one, or like
Mm.
that mentality of
Yeah.
let's get around the regulators, let's get around the scientific stuff, let's go right up to the line but never cross it, and let's suggest we go across it with our marketing. And there's all of these things that I worry about in the B2C space and the B2B2C space, because I just scientist by background, doctor by background, clinician by background, evidence-based by background, we're evidence-based beasts, academics, and it it just fills me with such hope that a company like Hertility can really set the bar at that kind of level and go, we are putting scientific rigor absolutely everywhere, and it makes us better. Thank you very much. So please do the same. I love that.
This is the thing, like I think that kind of stuff, it will slow you down in a sense because it makes it more
Yep.
difficult to in product development to to do all these like checks and quality assurance and everything. But in the end, it hopefully like builds that patient trust and that clinician trust and all that
Yes.
stuff that's required. But you're right. Like I sometimes speak to companies and they have a product that's a medical device, and I ask them, "Oh, who do you have board in terms of like have on board in terms of your clinical staff?" And they have, "Oh, we don't talk to any clinicians." And he's just thinking, "Why aren't you talking to any clinicians? Who are you talking
Oh
to?
wow.
How did you develop this?"
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's
What's he doing?
yeah,
Please stop everything you're doing immediately.
I know, and that
Yeah.
stuff is a bit worrying and it's a bit of a red flag, isn't it? But yeah,
Mm,
hopefully the tide is turning and people are are more aware of that because you can just develop fast without the scientific rigor and put a product out, but you won't get any retention because people will try the
mm.
product and realize, oh, actually the report wasn't accurate, or I'm not going to try this again because it didn't fulfill my purposes in any way. So it's almost about like
It's fast versus far, isn't it?
exactly,
You'll go
exactly,
fast, but you won't go far because
exactly.
ultimately you will get caught out. Investors are becoming more sophisticated
Mm,
and getting investment from a whether it's a VC or any organization or person or whatever that knows this, the people know what to ask for now.
yeah,
Like
exactly,
people know this type of business model. They know what leads to success. They know the things that you're going to need to do from a regulatory perspective, and they're going to ask for them at that now. So it's yeah, okay. You might get around a few angels. You might put £1 million or two together and go, as I say, go right up to the line. But ultimately, you're going to have to cross it at some point. And actually, the sooner you built your QMS, the better, because trying to retrofit that stuff is going to be a lot more painful than just doing it from the
exactly,
start. Um,
exactly,
but let's
100%.
talk about that kind of stuff now. So you then moved to Nice. So tell me about that move, why you did it, what you do there, and yeah, we can talk about some startup-y stuff.
Yeah, multiple reasons. There wasn't like a single reason why I moved. I think I sort of felt that at Hertility I delivered all I could, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I
Complete the goal.
so we put out version 2 of the product, which is like the longer online health assessment and the improved report. Um, and that almost felt like magnum opus in a sense. For me
Mm.
anyway, not for everyone else. But it was like such a huge task. And once we had done the bug fixing and we realized that actually the report is so much better, the feedback is better, people, the clinicians are the clinicians who are checking the reports think it's so much better. Like that was so rewarding. Um but yeah, it was I felt like I wanted to go back into the public sector, and I didn't really know how to do that. And then I basically was just looking at job websites. I saw the nice job came up, and the role is horizon scanning and health tech. And um, that immediately, I was a bit concerned because I was thinking, oh, it's not women's health, and that's literally all I've ever done ever. So that's a bit
Mm.
strange. But I was really interested to learn a bit more about the ecosystem, so to speak, because I feel like I had not had a lot of exposure to that, being within Hertility, because you are just focusing on your own thing. You don't really care much about what else is happening, or things like evaluation and procurement and all those things. So I was keen to sort of learn about that side of things, and especially how those things work in relation to the NHS. And so it felt nice,
Mm.
felt perfect because it's actually fairly academic, which is kind of my background as well. And the role is horizon scanning, which is super, super exciting because it means that you're looking for tech that's emerging and coming down the pipeline rather than looking at tech that's already here. So it's a bit it's like the most I always I'm a bit biased, but it is the most exciting part, I think, of the sort of health tech
Oh yes, the
sort
fun
of
end.
space.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely,
exactly,
definitely the
exactly.
rock and roll end of health tech. Yeah. Love it. So I've got a load of questions for you on this because I think first of all, what I want to do is I, I want you to sort of break down my preconceived ideas of what nice is first, because for me, as coming from the medical world as a clinician once upon a time, I have a view of what nice not nice equals nice guidelines. So
Yeah.
nice is, the it's almost like the school teacher. Like that's my view of what nice is. If nice was
Yeah.
a person, it would be like a school teacher, like that tells you what to do, and you need to operate within here. And they might send you to the headmaster for some punishment, but they're the ones just setting all the stuff like that. That's my view of what kind of nice is coming from a medical perspective, and I think that's useful for me to say. It might be completely wrong, and I know logically and cerebrally it's completely wrong, because of I know you have all the different programs and all the rest of it, so I do know that, but my feeling is still that, and I think that's probably the same for quite a lot of people, that probably does need to change. So can you just explain nice, the organization, in terms of health tech, what you guys do across the board, and I guess how people like us in health tech, startups, clinicians, all the rest of it, how should we be thinking about nice?
Oh, it's quite a hefty question. Um,
It's quite big, yeah.
yeah, it's quite big. I totally agree with you because I used to use NICE guidelines all the time for my job at Hertility, and I didn't realize all the different aspects of what NICE did until I applied for this job. So I guess you could describe NICE's in relation to health tech. NICE's core role is to evaluate health tech for clinical effectiveness and cost effectiveness, and then write
Nice.
recommendations and guidance as a result. So the overarching aim for NICE is to make sure that we are um, producing guidance that provides, I guess, that suggests where taxpayer money should be spent in a sense, like what is the
Yeah.
best value for the taxpayer, which is where the sort of clinical effectiveness, cost effectiveness thing comes
Mm.
in. In terms of all the NICE programs, so we NICE is very much like system needs led. So for health tech, what the main sort of program is that we get lots of information about what the system needs are, what are the pain points and clinical pathways, what are the issues that are happening, and we get that information
Mm.
from NHS England. We might get it from the Royal Colleges. We might get it from people, at the front line who've told us various things. And then our job is to basically look to see if there's any health tech out there that could be used to address those pain points. And then we basically have a prioritization process where we try and figure out, is this the right thing for NICE to be focusing on at the moment? And then we go through a scoping process where we look to see what evidence is out there for that health tech, that sort of that pain point that health tech is supposed to address. And then we go through evaluation, which is like the clinical effectiveness, cost effectiveness, and then we write guidance as a result. But we have lots of different programs, so we are going through a bit of a what we describe as like a whole life cycle approach. So we have our full guidance, which is what people often think of immediately when they think of NICE, which is the guidance that does require like those full on RCTs to evaluate that bit of tech. But we also have an early value assessment program. So
Yeah.
this is for tech which we know it would fit a system need, and it has potential, but it doesn't have the evidence base yet. So it's a bit of a program where we essentially guide the evidence generation. So that's really promising, I think, for a lot of tech nowadays where they haven't thought about the evidence generation early, which is fair enough because
Mm.
as I'm sure most people know, there is no mandate for NICE to write uh, guidance on before it gets procured. So people can procure what they want. There's no
Mm.
mandate for NICE to say whether they should or not. Um, but it does improve your likelihood.
Can I just ask on that, Thorny? One question that I have on the early value assessment is, who listening is that relevant for? So who listening should actually go, oh, I should do that, or I should look at the website and check that out, or like what exactly in terms of organizational stage or size or what they do, or do you know?
Uh, so it's
Does anyone know?
does anyone know? Does anyone know what's going on? No, it's not a one size fits all. So we for
Okay.
so as I said, we're systems led. So it's very much like we figure out what the problem is first, and then we look at the tech afterwards. Um, so but early value assessment or
Oh, so
either
you go and find it and then you tell them to go through that assessment.
what do you mean?
As in, you said you were systems led, right? So you were
Yeah.
problem led. So you
Yes.
decide what the problem is and then you'd think about potential solutions. Do you then look for the potential startups and then get them an early value assessment. Is that the way around it is?
Yeah, yeah. So we get the problem first, and it's not us deciding the problem, it's everyone else who's, working within,
The
um
system, yeah.
yeah, within the system who tells us the problems, and then we research and see what's out there. Um, so the type of tech, the type of companies that go through EVA are the companies that there is some there's some evidence to back up their value claim, but it's not the
Yep.
full on like end-to-end studies, RCTs that you would expect from a full
Got you.
evaluation. So
Got
they
you.
they've got something that suggests that there is evidence behind a value proposition, but it's not it could be something that's very sort of sparse or not potentially
I
not
understand.
massively rigorous. And then with the other thing they need is the regulatory approval. So
Yep.
if you've got the regulations behind you, then fantastic as well. So those are the companies that are suitable for either. Um, but it is systems led, so we would always focus on the problem first, and then we'll scope out. And so I think there's probably a bit of a misunderstanding where uh, tech companies think they just need to be in front of nice for us to look at it, but actually because we're systems
Mm,
led, we'll look at the problem first, and then if you fit the
I
problem,
see.
then great. That being said, we've got a front door. So the front door is intended for guideline updates, but essentially, if you're a clinical person who uses a lot of health tech in your profession, and you know that there's a bit of tech that we should be writing guidance on and we haven't already, that's a way for you to sort of signal to us that, oh, can you please have
Love
a look
that.
at this? And then we'll do scoping to see whether there actually is a problem behind the tech. And then it goes both ways, is basically what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
Haven't explained
I
that very
understand.
coherently,
Awesome.
but
No, you have. No, you have. Absolutely, you have. I totally get it. And your job specifically, so the horizon scanning component, what does that entail?
horizon scanning, well, enhanced horizon scanning at NICE is fairly new. There's health tech and there's medicine. So we both work together to have a bit of a more of a joined up process. But horizon scanning is basically trying to look at the 2 to 5 year pipeline of health tech, which might be coming through. And the reason why we set up in the first place is essentially preparedness. So, is there anything that we should be aware of that might be disruptive to NICE or NICE's processes or the NHS in general that we should have foresight of? But in practice, it is really difficult to tell what is 2 to 5 years away with health tech because there
Oh,
are no timelines for everything. So
absolutely.
so the way that we sort of figure that out is by technology readiness level, which I think was originally developed for space tech, but
Mm,
UKRI now use that as like one of their frameworks, and it's actually quite good because the technology readiness level, you start at the TRL 1, and TRL 1 is like your idea. You formulated an idea, and then
mm,
TRL 9 is, you're fully operational in a relevant environment. Um, and then the latter TRLs are sort of focused on demonstrating, and demonstrating is kind of like akin to evidence in a sense. So it works really
mm,
well for
mm.
NICE because what we focus on is evidence.
And sorry, do you put companies into that framework and label them TRL, or do you put certain technologies as a group into those?
It's both. So, it
Okay.
depends. So the way that I horizon scan at the moment is I might focus on a topic area. So this year I did a horizon scan on obesity. I'm also doing a horizon scan at the moment on point of care testing for virtual wards. So they're like
Ooh.
areas, they're pockets of
Yep.
where tech might be useful. The earlier on you go in terms of technology readiness, the more likely you are to see a scientific advancement rather than an actual product with a use case. So
Mm,
if you go on, say, like something that's very early on in terms of technology readiness, what you're looking at is a nature paper that suggests that this signaling pathway is important for this condition. And that's
hmm
that's the level of information that you get. Um,
mm,
so it's unknown whether that will eventually translate into a product at that point, but
mm.
that's the foundational level of science that's required to eventually get a product.
Phew. So
Yeah.
it's really cutting edge stuff then.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit it's all like it's very the stuff that's further on in the pipeline is obviously a lot more uncertain. So and even sometimes the stuff that's very near in the pipeline can be really uncertain. So it's a bit of a tricky one. Like
Mm.
people always assume that horizon scanning is just, you definitely will know what's going to happen in the future. And it's not like that at all. It's sort of suggesting it's finding out signals of things that might happen and then trying to figure out whether that's important for you as an organization. And where what I do is basically trying to figure out whether that tech might be disruptive um, for NICE and the system as a whole. So when I say disruptive, I mean, it might require us to change our evaluation methods because there's nothing like it at the moment. It's completely brand new.
Mm.
Or disruptive in the sense that you need an entirely new clinical pathway for it to be implemented, in which case,
Yeah, okay.
the powers that be, NHS England, DHSE, are going to have to figure out how to do that.
And so you have links to all of those different people when you're putting this stuff out to then get things done. Yeah,
Well, so
okay.
it's very early on in the process, but NICE in general have very, very strong links to all the system partners, and
Yeah.
we're sort of developing our horizon scanning to make sure that the right people are seeing it at the right time. But yeah, it is very early on. We're very much learning by doing, and yeah, I'd love to come on again and give you like a real life example of how that sort of panned out, perhaps.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
you just tell me when. I'd love that. I've got a few questions here because this is fascinating. How are you guys I mean, we got this far without talking about AI in any substantive detail, but how are you guys thinking about LLMs and AI? And I'll ask you like quite specifically on this because you talk there about potentially needing to change frameworks and potentially
yeah,
needing to change the way that you evaluate stuff and and that's the kind of grenade that LLMs have really thrown in really and people are baking them in all sorts of different areas and parts of their software or stack or like there's lots of places where AI and LLMs are going to be assisting diagnosis or
mm,
diagnosing, dare I say, or in mental health and treating if they're part of that layer. Companies like Limbic are going to be building specific models around this stuff, and yeah, they've got loads of checks and balances, and they are regulated, but plenty aren't,
yeah.
and all the rest of it. So, and there's a big grey area of what is a clinical action and what is not, and so there's a grey area there. So there's loads of grey areas around diagnosis, around treatment, around support, around autonomous. And so there's so much there that I'm just intrigued as to how you interface with AI in terms of what you do with horizon scanning and if NICE has got anything to say on all of this stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so much work going on AI at NICE at the moment. So much. We published a statement of intent last year, which sort of acknowledged that NICE have a role to be proactive about what we do with AI
Mm,
in the healthcare system. Um, In terms of so, I mean, there are always AI related topics that are going through our prioritization process and our scoping process. So, I mean, just like a couple of months ago, we prioritized an AI EEG topic. So things are happening in terms of like
wow.
what's happening for scoping and stuff at the moment. Um, and I feel like NICE do seem to be fairly on the ball with that. I think
Yeah.
with horizon scanning, we're just kicking off like an AI horizon scan actually at the moment, and we are
Mm,
also thinking, is there tech which might be coming down the pipeline that isn't directly relevant to NICE as an organization, but perhaps we should be thinking about evaluating. Um, and I think that's where
yeah.
like all the stuff where you know the it's not controversy, but the difference in opinions about AVTs and stuff, that all comes in, and I
Yeah.
think that's all stuff that we are actively thinking about and working on at the moment.
Mm. Ambient voice for those people that don't know that.
Yes, yeah,
But
sorry.
how do people get onto your radar for a horizon scan, and on a super practical level, how do you horizon scan?
There's sort of 2 branches, which is I either get told, what to horizon scan on because there's someone within NICE who needs a horizon scan on a specific area, and that might be
Mm,
related to an active piece of work that's going on at NICE or a topic that might be of interest, or a guideline update or whatever it is. And so our horizon scan on that based on what someone has said, but we also have we're developing a proactive horizon scanning process where basically trying to keep an ear to the ground to make sure that NICE aren't missing things that wouldn't have sort of come under their radar in the traditional route.
Mm.
Um, so so keeping an ear to the ground in terms of like, oh, there's lots of funding going into this at the moment, that might eventually translate into a product development that might be interesting for NICE. And the whole overarching theme is disruption. So it is impossible to be proactively scanning for all health tech ever. um, so you have to sort of think of everything under a lens of, is it relevant to NICE? Is it going to be disruptive? And that's kind of like what I'm really interested in, because
Mm.
that's the stuff I can sort of forward on as useful information.
And are you public around what you are currently scanning at any one time? Is that information available?
No, but that's not a deliberate decision. That's
Okay.
purely because we're just setting ourselves up. I think I'm very much happy to. I feel like I'm very fortunate in the sense that because horizon scanning is sort of precedes a lot of the processes at NICE, there is lots of room to be talking to innovators and chatting to them directly about what they're working on, even if they haven't fully
Amazing.
developed a prototype yet, even if they've just got an idea and think, oh, it'd be really good to develop this. And I'm hoping the communication channels are a little bit more open now we've got these kind of processes in place, because traditionally they haven't been. It's all NICE have been quite um s- siloed isn't the right word, but it's been difficult to sort of get in touch with them because there are so many teams doing some really full on work. And
Yeah.
I think the difficulty is that people assume that once you're in touch with someone at NICE, they'll
Then the
automatically
whole
route you.
organization
Yeah,
knows. And yeah.
exactly. The whole organization will know, and you'll convince the whole organization to route you for guidance. And the truth is, there's no single person that can decide what does and doesn't get through NICE guidance. And we've deliberately built it that way. Um,
Yes.
I think it's important to be chatting to people early and sort of showing that there's room for, like, it's not even co-production, but just showing that there's room to talk about what we've seen in terms of system pain points and what we would like to see in terms of evidence generation for us to evaluate your
Mm.
product in the first place. Because it's a shame when, like, companies like you have to develop so fast, and sometimes there won't be room to develop and launch and then go back and do a clinical trial. Like, who's got the time or the money to do that? Um,
Absolutely.
so it'd be good to start early. And we've actually got like am I allowed to plug this? I'm not sure. We've got
Of
a
course.
we've
Of
got a
course.
we've got a team called Nice Advice who are just absolutely fantastic. They are fee based, but it's literally all cost recovery. So they only charge enough to get back their salaries, basically. But
Yeah.
it's essentially advice on how to develop your value proposition in the NHS, what evidence gaps you currently have, how to generate evidence, how you can develop your model for health economics, outcome research, and that kind of thing. So it's all we've got the stuff there. I think people just aren't aware of, like, the breadth of all the services at NICE and how willing we are to sort of help you. But it's
Yeah.
it's it's tricky. But I also understand, like, innovators probably are quite frustrated with us because we are a huge, huge organization, and sometimes it takes a while to get a reply back and all that stuff. Which, yeah,
It does.
yeah.
And things do take, yeah, things do take time. I think with the right leadership though, you end up moving in the right direction. And from what you've said, from everything you've described, it seems that way for me. I think one of the very first things you said actually when I asked you to talk about NICE was that you said, yeah, we've got streams for health tech and medicine. I mean, even in that phraseology, putting health tech right next to medicines as important, you know, I I think that is, and I'm obsessed with language. It's what we do over here in my world, but it's actions like that that make people believe it. And
Yeah.
therefore, it does end up having that level of importance. The way it's then talked about, the way it's then regulated downstream, the way other teams will appreciate what it is. I think even just the simple action of just putting that, on the same line at the same level and all the rest of it, like this is stuff is important. It will be treating, it will be diagnosing, it will be doing all the things that, medicines will be doing. There'll be contraindications to it. There'll be all of those things. And I think for us to consider areas of health tech or devices or software that is treating just as medicines will treat, I think they have an effect on us, and therefore all of the things are still in play. And I think that even as an act of leadership is so important. Um, and so I'm interested in what the vision and the goal is here then. And like, the phrase would be, what does good look like? You guys are starting out in this structure and team, and trying to build something here, and trying to build some infrastructure that interfaces with the health tech world. So what will make you have a feeling of success in terms of what you are trying to achieve here, and in merging with the health tech world?
Phew,
Might just be that, merging well with the health tech world,
yeah,
everyone being aware of us.
yeah,
Probably all the things you've already said. It's probably a rubbish question.
no, 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 it's a great question. I think partly is that. I mean, I hope that we eventually get to a stage where innovators feel like they can get in touch with us quite early on, to talk
Okay.
through what they're thinking about in terms of product development, and that
Mm,
they are given good guidance about how what they should be developing for in the first place and how they should develop it. That would be like an ideal
mm,
situation for me, because that would feel like that we've bridged the gap basically. And
mm,
it wouldn't feel like we are just like going in our own worlds and going at different paths and different at different
mm,
progress and everything. So that would be
mm.
amazing. And I think your on your comment in terms of medicines versus health tech, that is something we're also actively thinking about. Like
Is it?
how do
That's really
you
good.
how do you look at health tech and medicines in a bit more of a holistic way? And that's kind of why horizon scanning, we are deliberately sort of like, there's two of, as in there's the medicines lead who's a pharmacist, and she's amazing, but we are always working together. We
Mm,
we are trying to figure out how best to display our findings in terms of what's coming down the pipeline in a holistic way, so that people who are decision making can figure out what to do with that information. Because um like Alzheimer's is a really good example, in the sense that there's a bunch of new Alzheimer's drugs coming up, but there's also a bunch of new Alzheimer's blood tests which potentially might be coming down the pipeline as well. So that's kind of like a nice way of like thinking about how we can be working together and putting that information out together, so that the right decision can be made, whether that is suggesting a health tech over a medicines, or vice versa, or you know um
mm.
yeah, a companion diagnostic, or whatever that is.
I love it. I think it's great. And ultimately, my overarching feeling of coming out of this podcast is that it's so good to know that Nice, as an organization with everything it can do, is putting this level of scrutiny on health tech, and it is has all of these programs that you're talking about, and is running alongside us. And just knowing that gives me a level of comfort that clinical effectiveness and value is being looked at constantly, and that advice is getting to the buyers, and guidelines are being written around this, and it is being held in regard as a medicine. I think that's just so great to know from my perspective, and I'm sure for a lot of other people as well, because it can feel a little bit wild westy without knowing that these things exist, right? And that's dangerous for everyone, because as soon as fingers get burnt, then confidence gets lost, and when confidence goes, buyer confidence is what drives our sales for everything. And so
Yeah.
if buyer confidence is gone, then we're not going to improve, and things are going to stay the same. So yeah, it's so nice to know that Nice is over all of this stuff. I guess my final question would be, what's exciting for you at the minute? Like, what, out of everything you've talked about and everything in your job, whether it's a particular clinical area, whether it's a particular technology, whether it's a particular thing you're scanning for, or I don't know, is there something that comes to mind with what's most exciting?
Oh gosh. I'm so biased. I will always go back to women's health.
Good for you.
No, but the reason why is because I mean, women's health, you has traditionally been there's been no money in the research, and
Yeah,
only
which is where we
recent
started this conversation.
which is only where we are, but which only recently I think people have started seeing, like, actually it's not acceptable. Why aren't you giving money
Mm,
towards research? And I think the tide has sort of turned a little bit. Like, you are getting much more news and interest in femtech than you were a few years ago. So I think, I think the problem is though, is that a lot of stuff hasn't because sometimes there isn't the baseline knowledge for women's health in the first place, it's really difficult to develop tech on top of that. So if we don't know truly how a menstrual cycle works, how on earth are you gonna develop tech
Yeah.
to improve.
Data gap.
Yeah,
Or yeah,
exactly, data
exactly.
gap. So I think there's a lot of femtech that's being developed that perhaps doesn't have the evidence base in terms of foundation, which worries me slightly. But I think there's such opportunity for tech to be collecting that data to fill that gap in the first place. And I think that's quite exciting because I feel like that wouldn't have happened if there hadn't been like a femtech boom. I think, it would have been academia trying to collect that data by themselves, not getting that sort of real world evidence, that sort of end to end service pathways or anything like that.
I think it's so important that everyone listening really takes on the notion that NICE is our friend in this sector. There are plenty of programs, there are plenty of ways to get in touch with you, there are plenty of teams there, and no less than yourself. So I think if people do want to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do so?
So at the moment, I don't have an inbox or anything, but just tag me on LinkedIn or message me or whatever it is. I mean, I'm probably quite easily easy to be found. So if you are developing something that you think, oh, this is going to be such a game changer, and I don't know how NICE would evaluate it because it is such a big game changer, then please do just like message me, and then I'll put it in front of the people who need to see it.
Awesome.
One other thing that innovators could be doing, which is super helpful, is registering themselves on the innovation service, the NHS innovation service. So if you do this, then that automatically puts you under NICE's radar as well, and also gives you a way to access NICE advice too. So it's quite a good platform for doing that.
Thank you, Thani, and we will get you back on and we'll talk through some of the stuff you're up to. So yeah, I'm loving it.
Fabulous. Great. Thank you so much.